Thank you for listening to a Sunday morning sermon from First Christian Church. For more information about these sermons or FCC in general, visit us online at fccflora.com.
So today we're going to look at the grandparents. This is an interesting section as you begin to think about the role that grandparents play in the life of grandchildren and the life of still their children, as they can look at that family value, as they continue to lead the legacy of the family. It's interesting to kind of put this in perspective, because you begin to think about how grandparents are those historians. They kind of carry the story of the family. They kind of know what's been and where we've been and how they've done it. All right? They're also the ones that kind of shares as mentors and role models of what life looks like and how it should be lived out. And so you begin to think about how these roles are significant. You begin to notice the role that it plays in the life of their grandchildren, because they're models for them as well. Now, even though they might not live in the same home or in the same area, they can still model what it means to be an adult, to walk with Christ for them. Now, we often see that children look beyond their own parents for role models, whether it's youth leaders or people from the church or grandparents, because if you have a teen in your house and you're a parent, you've been told that you're wrong and you know nothing, right? Maybe once. No? Nobody else? Okay, so you've been in that environment where kids think they know everything, and so parents, you know nothing. This is where we need grandparents to step in and to model that and say, yes, they do know something. At that age, they thought I knew nothing. But now they're turning to me. So we begin to see this model take place of what it looks like to walk with Christ, and so for our grandparents to continue to show what it means for us. The model and the follow this is they follow this example as Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, right? As he's going there, he says, follow me as I'm modeling Christ. Follow my example as I continue to follow Jesus. That they would set an example for others to see, to do, and to continue after. And so you begin to think about this in this life. You begin to think as grandparents at this age that you're in now, you've done your job, you're retired, you've run the course, you've worked diligently, you've raised your kids, you've watched them leave, you watched them go off and start their own families. It's time to relax, to sit back, to enjoy, and to share. And what better way than to spoil the grandkids? Right? We see in Proverbs chapter 17, verse 6, as it writes, it says, the children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children. Right? We see that as elders, they like this idea that family lines continue to go down, that we can pass down tradition and heritage and lineage. And so you begin to think that these grandchildren, it's the pride of our family line continues on. We can share in this together. And so as grandparents, you're supposed to enjoy this. It's kind of a crown, as it says, of the aged, of those who have experienced life. This is your crown to share in this, to be excited. But we could probably even see somewhere in there where it says maybe even spoil them. Just a little, right? And you probably have heard this phrase one too many times. And maybe if you're a new parent, you understand this. When they say that phrase, it's our job to spoil them and send them home, right? Please stop. No. I'm grandma, I'm grandpa. I can give them all the sugar I want because they're going home with you, right? So we do this model a lot where we go through and it's like, hey, just let them have it. Let them go. And so maybe you're the grandparent, you're like, you know what, I'm the extra candy grandparent. Here, take this with you. Or maybe, hey, here's an extra $1. Go buy yourself an ice cream cone. Or maybe you're the grandparent who likes to find the loudest toy that you can find and then send it home with them, right? My mom's in timeout right now because of this same thing, okay? So if she's listening later on this week, she'll know she's still in timeout. For Lincoln's birthday, she gave him a microphone. A kid with a big personality does not need a microphone, because he goes through the house introducing everything. So, Mom, brother's touching me. We all heard it. The house heard it. They're like, turn it down. So we see that, we understand that sometimes grandparents like to do those extra things and to spoil, right? I've realized that as I get older, I've already identified the type of grandparent I want to be. Because you can send stuff home with them all you want, and against our will, we resist, and we don't replace. We leave the batteries in, but once they die, they don't get replaced. So I want to be the grandpa that just brings batteries every time I visit and just start fixing everything. I've already said that in mind, like, I just want to be the battery grandpa. They know when I come, I'm just fixing everything. Everything's going to be making noise for when I leave. They knew I came and I visited. I left my mark. And I think that's the point that we need to see, is that as grandparents, your whole role into your family, and whether it's into your children or into your grandchildren, is to leave a mark, to leave that legacy. And so maybe it's something more, right? Because Scripture identifies that the role that you have is far more than just grandparents, and even those seniors, even if you don't have kids, that yours to be an impact on the next generation. So we see in Psalms chapter 145, verse 4, we have a few verses here. One generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. To share in this together, Deuteronomy 4:9. Only be careful and watch yourself closely, so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen, or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and their children after them. And then Psalms 92:14 and 15. They will still bear fruit in old age, and they will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright, he is my rock, and there's no wickedness in him. And so, even though we say the phrase, spoil them and send them home, what if our goal was more than that? What if our goal was somewhere like this? Send them home with something that truly matters and will last. Because we can send them home with candy and all sugared up, but it'll fade. But what if we send them home with something that's truly going to last? And that's a legacy after Christ. That's something that you model and that you show every time you're around them. And yes, you can use candy. I'm not taking that away from you. But what I'm saying is it comes to your life and following Christ. And that's for all of us. Each day that we walk in pursuit of following Jesus. And so for us, that we would understand that you're seeking to live a Christ-like life, which will leave a Christ-like legacy for them to follow. And so we see the Christian life, we're called to run this race. We're called to continue in pursuit where God is leading us. And for some of you are saying, yeah, I understand, I'm retired now, my kids are grown, they're gone. It's my time. Just because you retire from work doesn't mean you retire from Christ. And it reminds us that the race is still happening. You are still in the midst of it. It's still time to run. We see in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him endures the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that they will not grow weary and lose heart. We see this, that here we are, and it doesn't mean we're at the end, but we're still running. And as you're in pursuit of Christ, as you're continuing to chase after him, I understand as you get older, your speed might slow down, but your impact doesn't. And to understand, you say, well, I'm tired now. Don't let your impact fall into temptation of that. But still have an impact on the legacy and the faith of your family that surrounds you. We understand the impact can be significant in the role of the lives of others. We see as Paul is writing to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, one of my favorite passages throughout Scripture, don't let anyone look down at you because you are young, but set an example for other believers in speech and conduct and love and in faith and in purity. That this is the moment that you have to pour into others. And we see here as Paul is pouring into Timothy so that he would pour into others. And so it's not about just pouring to the young, but the old would receive as well. That we would share in this together. A legacy of building each other up, encouraging more towards the kingdom of God. And so as you begin to think the impact that you have isn't just on your own children and your grandchildren, but it's into your community, into your world, those who are around you. It's not just limited to those people. But we often see that some of the greatest impact that you will have is within your home, within your family. And because of that, we begin to see the power that comes through this. The walk of faith that they're shared together as they would continue to follow after him. And so no matter the family dynamic, because every dynamic is different, everyone has their own rhythm and season, but to understand that the power that you have into the lives of your children and grandchildren, that the race isn't over for you. And so now it's time to continue after, to continue to run that race and leave an impact. And so how do we begin to do that? Well, it starts with prayer. It has to begin with prayer. We need grandparents and parents, prayer warriors, who aren't afraid to pray big prayers for their children, to ask for God's protection on them as they step out each day and they live life. We need people who are willing to pray. And it doesn't matter if you have contact with them every day or hardly none at all, or whether they're believers, non-believers. Pray. Say their name every day. Lift your children up in prayer. I have mentioned before that I'm a product of prayer, and I understand that. My grandma, as she was getting older, she was dealing with numerous cancers, and her body was failing, and we would go in, as we'd stay at her house every summer, we would go through. My grandparents lived the same distance in the opposite directions. My mom's parents lived on her way to work. My dad's parents lived on his way to work. And so during the summer, we would alternate days that we would go to their houses. My grandparents were much older at that time, and so just as much as I needed them to watch me, they needed me and my sister to watch them. So we grew up kind of taking care of each other, sharing values and things that what we can continue to pour into each other. But oftentimes you go into my grandma's room, and on her bed, there's always this notebook underneath her pillow. And there's so many times that if you'd go in there and we'd lay down, I'd just kind of just push it aside. I really didn't understand what it was until she passed. And inside this notebook was name after name after name. And I could keep going, name and name. Just people she met randomly. Their names would be in there. And she would pray this when she was laying in bed at night and her body was failing and she couldn't sleep. She just prayed. And in here, you see the names of the 3 grandsons. And it says, pray for ministry. All 3 grandsons are in ministry. A prayer that she started before I even knew the power of what that was. Prayers that she had for our families and our future spouses and our children. She was a prayer warrior. Grandparents, we need you to be prayer warriors. We need you to mention by name your children and grandchildren. Whether you understand or not, they're under attack. Relationships are under attack. Homes are under attack. Children are under attack. Temptation is everywhere, pulling us apart. And we need those prayers of protection spoken by you daily. We need prayers that you would help guide us. We need prayers for wisdom, that we would seek counsel, that you would be there to pour in when we need help, that we would understand when we need help. And that in those things that you would continue to seek growth in us. Because it's simply this, that you could say that it will help them remain. It's not enough just to remain in faith, but we need to be growing in faith. And we need parents who are willing to pray that they would continue to see their children grow in faith. Not just to receive, not just to walk, but you would live in it every day. Those prayers of witness. Prayers that would build in that wisdom and understanding. We also need grandparents who are going to be present. Those who make an effort to be a part of the lives, to understand the struggles and the challenges of schedules and events and locations. But yet we're still going to be a part of the story. We got to be careful. We got to be cautious. Don't want to be overbearing. Don't want to be too controlling. We got to allow decisions, right? TV has this great thing where they allow to make fun of mother-in-laws. Everyone loves Raymond, right? We have those things where it's like, oh, all this stigma, but it's more of just living life together and learning how to be involved and how to share and how to step back and how to allow control. Because each home, each family, each dynamic, each couple is called to raise their child the way they biblically see fit. And sometimes I don't understand. Just support. Understand that they are seeking to serve God with the gift that they have. And so the rules and guidelines they continue to build to help to, as they see fit, to bring God's kingdom here. To understand that you have an influence to be had and to be involved in those different things. And through your presence and understanding, those things can happen. And sometimes it's stretching yourself, right? Learning new technology is amazing. You might think, oh no. But here's the thing. Through texting, through FaceTime, through Snapchat, you can have an involvement in your children and your grandchildren's lives in ways that you never thought of when you were growing up. But you're meeting them on their level, and they're now beginning to see that you're taking an invested interest in their lives. To understand this in a more way, let me tell you this. My 3-year-old knows how to work FaceTime. He can call grandma and tell her he's out of fruit snacks. And within 2 days, Amazon delivers fruit snacks to our house. So when you say, I can't figure it out, they want to talk to you. And then you can still spoil them. You get both, best of both worlds. So use what you have to your advantage. Just being present. Finding new access ways for them to encounter you. To walk with them in this way. To understand that you have a significant role within the family and to your grandchildren. Grandmas, you are super sweet. I loved the time growing up with my grandparents. I loved spending time with my grandma and watching them serve the family and teaching me how to cook and do numerous things. But here's the thing, more so what they modeled for my sister. Because we need more grandmas who are willing to step up and show what it means to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Someone who's going to follow in obedience and show what it means, that someone who has an open door, who's willing to serve others, someone who fears the Lord, and her children call her blessed. We need more women who are going to model what it's like to serve her husband and to love without restraint. To what it means to serve the family and to just love. I spent numerous times with my grandparents and my grandpas. I'd watch them do different things. My grandpas were hard workers. They worked. I think one grandpa retired when he was 80 and one retired when he had a heart attack. Essentially in his late 70s. So they just kept working. But we need grandfathers as well. We don't just need the tenderness and the sweetness of grandmas, but we need grandfathers who are going to model what it looks like to be a man. Men, I hate to say it, but we've dropped the ball in our culture. Man who has taken a drop, and we need to regain that. And it begins with grandpas, grandfathers stepping up and showing what it means to be biblically men, to follow after Christ in these ways. If you skip down to Psalms 1, verses 1 to 2, it says, Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked or stand in the way of sinners, take or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That we need to raise men of integrity, to draw them back to what it means to love sacrificially, to love their bride like they would love the church, to give it all, and what it means to love your spouse, to share in this together. Thirdly, you need to be willing to tell your story. Most grandkids don't know much about their grandparents. They don't know a lot about their life, their story, the connection of how things worked and how things used to work. And sometimes they're needing those stories. They need the value of the good times, the crazy times, the funny times, the bad times. When you needed to embark wisdom in your life, when you needed those moments when God would have had to speak into your life. They need those stories of knowing how to walk. So not only do they need your prayer, they need your stories, they need your word. They need it for the family. To share in this. To understand what biblical values look like. You might have heard this, talk is cheap. See, kids will hear everything you say, but they're also going to model what you do. James 2:18 says this, but someone will say, you have faith and I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds and I will show you my faith by my deeds. They're watching everything you do, every move you make, every word you say. Grandparents, we need you to model this life. We need to age with grace. Sometimes this is difficult because sometimes as we get older, we don't age the way that we thought we would. Our bodies, we don't understand what's going to happen next and why things are going to happen. But sometimes it's going back, just understanding we just got to go with it. It's easy to feel hurt as our body changes, as we suffer just old age. We need to be careful we don't get bitter as we lose loved ones and those close to us. We need to understand that it's not always about us. Sometimes it's easy to self-centered because we've always done these traditions. It's always been this way. But now it's time that we begin to branch out. We've got people in this location and over there, and we've added more people to the family. We've got new schedules. We need to adapt. And so you begin to see this, and we see this as we understand, as Proverbs 17:6 says, it's the crown of the aged that our grandchildren. So be a part of that. Don't let moments pass. Just because seasons change, don't allow them to pass, but be in pursuit. And then finally, we need to listen. And that's Sounds crazy, but we live in a changing world. We live in a world that as young parents, we have more things facing us than you could have ever imagined. We have new laws and new things in our schools that they're now allowed to teach. Can you imagine the things that you now as a parent you have to explain to your child? The things that they can see on TV and movies. We have to explain so much more. And so when you begin to think as a sometimes you just got to listen. And sometimes you just need to be an encouragement to understand what is happening in the life of their world right now. Because it's changing. And how do we hold tight to the truth of God? And so listen and share. But be part of the story together. It's taking their concerns and their feelings, walking with them. And so we're excited as a grandparent to share that with you, that we can encourage you in this moment of faith for all who walk each day seeking to do more in obedience with Christ. And so being a grandparent, for those who are there, I'm not there, but everyone says it's an exciting moment. And unfortunately, many say if they could skip childhood or having their own children and just going straight to grandkids, they would have done that too. Because it's so much sweeter. But I pray that our prayer is so much more than just spoiling them and sending them home. But rather we would do something much more. Have fun with your grandkids. Make memories, serve with them, share with them, listen to them, laugh with them. Be a shoulder that they can lean on. Be an encouragement. Because the bigger part about a series about faith is that we understand the faith dynamic of a family is dying. And when the faith of the family dies, the church begins to die. And it's leaving a legacy that is far greater than just your name and your story. We see here in Psalms chapter 78, verse 5 through 7, He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which He commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put in their trust in God and would not forget His deeds, but would keep His commands. There's power in that next generation. I remember growing up, and for many of you know my name, I'm the third. I'm in a line of Lewises, so I'm the third Lewis, Robert Holloway. And growing up, as we had people who would pour into my life, and my great uncles would come and visit, and they're like, hey, just so you know, no pressure. And of course, I was like 9. You're the last Holloway boy. The name is on your shoulders to carry forth the family. And here's the thing, even though we didn't carry on the 4th and the 5th, we allowed them to have their own new legacy. See, we love that idea of, that's my family. And ooh, there's that last name. Or maybe you watch your kids, you support them and say, that's my kid, that's my blood. But let's be honest, church. In our families, as much as we're proud of that last name, we're proud of our heritage, we're proud of what we've done, there's something we need to remember. The blood that was given for us is greater than the blood that's within us. We need to remember the blood that was given on Calvary for you and I is greater than any blood, any tradition of our family line that runs through our veins. And to begin to live for that legacy more than the legacy of our own last name is beginning to put Christ first through all things in our story, in our pursuit of things. When our family line, you continue to see there's a legacy of following Christ. We looked at the story of Jacob not too long ago as he wrestled with God. He had those moments. And remember, as he's out there wrestling, it says that he walked away. He left in a different way. It wasn't just his physical walk, but his spiritual walk. And he changed the direction of his family for decades and generations to come. May we live in such a way that the descendants that follow after us, the generations to follow, would be changed and walk in a different way because of our walk today. Because we have a hope like no other. In a crazy world, we have hope and a promise that will stand true. That blood was shed for you and I, that was poured out. as he breaks the chains of the temptations of this life. When we feel like we've had enough, we're overwhelmed and we're overcome, there he is, calling out to those who believe to just receive, to accept. So the question is, who are you following? And how are you following? That may we follow in such a way that starts today, and that would continue to leave a legacy for our family to follow.